Hey race fans, Steve Letarte here for NASCAR Fantasy Fastlane inside here at the Daytona International Speedway. Unfortunately, we have one of those little summer pop-up showers, but we expect it to be out of the way and racing soon. But look, it's not just me, because frankly, I've been getting beat single-handedly in my fantasy team all year long. So we brought in Steven Young from Roto Grinders. Explain exactly Roto Grinders and what you all do.
We provide content for daily fantasy. I'm our NASCAR guy. I do baseball. We do podcasts. We do all the stuff for pretty much all the sports.
So it's not going to hurt my feelings that they brought in an expert to correct the expert, but we'll see how it goes. It did convince me, though, to bring a notebook, half because he's here and half because we're at Daytona. Listen, the heat is here. It's the 4th of July, and the heat is being turned up because the playoffs are here. So really it's time. When you look at tonight's race, I look at it as a little bit of a wild card. I think it's going to be a wreck fest. I think sparks are going to fly. So how do you analyze a race like this?
We go back to Talladega, right? Only time that we've seen these cars on the track with this package. We saw a lot of passing for the lead. We saw cars working together. I think we're going to see a lot of wrecking. I think you're right. So I think the best thing to do when we come here is to save uses on our top end guys and get guys that we don't usually play, like a Ryan Newman maybe, who has the best average finish at Daytona.
Well, I like that play. And the other thing we've seen, and we've already seen it in practice, is manufacturer working together. We saw Chevy in one draft, Toyota in one draft. I think the history says it. I think Toyota, they get the credit for being the first. They came to Daytona a year ago, and they dominated the Daytona 500 with that teamwork. Then we saw Stewart-Haas Fords come back and do it at Talladega. And then it seems like Chevrolet said they had had enough. It worked at Talladega. I think it's going to work again this week. That's why when I look at my lineup, it's all about two things. It's a lot like the roulette wheel. That's how I look at Daytona. So what does it go, red or black? What is it, odd or even? Well, the two things that come up on my lineup is young drivers driving bow ties, young guys in Chevrolets. So one guy that the numbers would say avoid, but he's actually the cornerstone of my lineup, is Chase Elliott. It's going to be hard for you to find a number that I should play him, but my gut tells me Hendrick Motorsports is on an uptick. I know Rick Hendrick. I know he likes to win. He's got a little taste of it last week. I expect Chase to be good.
I don't.
I knew this was good. We're off to a great start.
Yeah, the stats say he doesn't have a top 10 here. Obviously, he won Talladega, so he has that going for him. The Chevys said, "Hey, we're going to work together." We've heard it in press conferences. We saw it at Talladega. I like it, but if you're going to play Elliott, you need to stack some Chevys with him to try to build that thing. So I don't hate it, but I don't love it because stats tell me not to play him.
That was his polite way of saying I didn't know what I was talking about. He wouldn't have Chase Elliott in. I'm going to get to the rest of my lineup because he kind of hinted to it, stacked with Chevrolets. But let's get some big names off the list. Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr. have been the biggest names of 2019. I think for multiple reasons, it's a must avoid. The first is I want to have them other races.
Right.
The other issue is very simple. The numbers, Truex, he's been outside the top 10 in 5 of the last 6 races. Kyle Busch, 20th or worse in 4 of the last 5 races. I cannot have a poor run and burn a usage with either of those drivers.
Yeah, when you're looking at it, obviously they're both starting in the top 5. There's only one way to go for them, and that's back. Unless they're going to finish in the top 5. And history tells us that the top 10 is not, optimal starting spots for this racetrack. So I'm not a fan of them either. I'm with you on this one. Martin Truex Jr. is, 27 times at Daytona and hasn't won yet. So I think if we're playing the odd game, it's good to fade them this weekend.
Michael Waltrip would say it doesn't matter how many starts, don't count them out. That's a story for a whole nother video. But I will say, when we come to Daytona, the trickiest thing is your lineup. So along with that, while we do talk bow ties, Kyle Larson, he was in the picture last week, just getting beat out by Alex Bowman. Another driver that I have just not seen it here at Daytona. One of only 4 tracks, he doesn't have a top 5. I don't see that changing tonight.
Yeah, he's one of those Chevys that I think I'd stay away from. He's starting up towards, I think the top 15. So he's another guy, I want more guys that I can save. And he's the guy that we're coming to some good tracks for Kyle Larson. So, we're going to go back to Bristol. I want to save those uses for him there.
Well, so we're going to get into my picks here in a minute, but real quick, remember on NASCAR Fantasy Live, on our fantasy game, you score like you do the driver's score. You get points at the stages, points at the finish. Talk a little bit, though. It's not that way in all daily fantasy. You see a lot of improving positions, fastest lap, where they finish. Is that basically the 3 main scoring?
Yeah, and, laps led, you get a little bit of points for that. So in daily fantasy, you're looking for more guys that are going to move through the field. Maybe guys like Brendan Gaughan, who we know are not racing for stage points, that are just going to sit back and let the things happen and then be there at the end. So I think, guys that are starting towards the back are the guys you're going to focus more on daily fantasy. Maybe guys in the 20s, I'm going to focus more on fantasy live that I don't typically use, like a Ty Dillon. He has an optimal starting spot. A Chris Buescher, optimal starting spot. Michael McDowell's really good here. So those are guys that I'm more looking at on fantasy live that I can play on daily fantasy as well. But I do like them for Fantasy Live as well.
I think he's cheating. I think he's looking at my notes because when you look at my lineup, I mentioned Chase Elliott, so let's talk about it. They're bow ties. I do have Chris Buescher, 26 years old. I expect him to run good. Ty Dillon, only 2 career top 10s, both here at the World Center of Racing. Another young guy, 27 years old. Both of those are going to be in my lineup. And I'm going to go with another Chevy driver, Ryan Preece. He only has 1 start, and that was an 8th place finish, but he backed it up with a good run at Talladega. When I talked to him in the garage area, he just seems like he's gaining confidence racing on Sunday, racing at the Cup level. I expect Ryan Preece, to your point, I'm not saying he's a winner, but good, solid points day somewhere up inside the top 10.
Yeah, when you look at Preece, you look back at Daytona and you look at Talladega, did a great job avoiding wrecks, being there at the end. And, that's all you can ask for, especially for Fantasy Live when you get points for finishing the race, too, and you want to finish in the top 15. So we get a lot of wrecks. These guys wreck out at the top. Preece would be one of those guys. Buescher's really good at it as well. And he's a guy that, you can look at maybe to get stage points as well. So I don't mind those picks at all. I actually like those ones.
Well, so
better than Chase Elliott.
He agreed. I got one. I got one in my book. So listen, my one perhaps veteran Chevy driver, I have Kurt Busch. I just like everything he's done with Chip Ganassi Racing. But I do have some non-Chevy guys, and they're both a consideration for my garage. Remember, Fantasy Live, you can go to your garage before the end of Stage 2. Hopefully, we're lucky enough that the accidents happen early. Never a guarantee. 2 drivers, though. My only Ford I'm considering, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Talk about hot and cold. You could go through the stats all you want. The other one, and I think this is maybe a sentimental pick, but Matty D. Matt DiBenedetto led the most laps in the Daytona 500. I think they thought it was going to be a better year than it's been. Had that emotional run at Sonoma. Can they back it up at Daytona? So Stenhouse, Matty D, perhaps garage picks. Your thoughts?
I like the Matt DiBenedetto pick, but I like the Stenhouse pick more. We know one thing. We're getting to the end of the season or regular season, and we know that Stenhouse is going to be aggressive. He's either going to finish in the top 10 or he's going to end the race on a record. When you're looking at it, we're looking at that second stage. We're going to have to make that decision on where are we at. Has he wrecked yet, and how aggressive is he being? And I think he's going to be very aggressive. What
we call Ricky Stenhouse is TV gold. He's going to make my job much, much easier. Okay, I went through my lineup. Is there anyone that really piques your interest we haven't mentioned?
When we're looking at it, the one guy that I think is really interesting is Bubba Wallace. We've seen him do really well on plate tracks.
Yeah.
He's a guy that is going to be aggressive. Made the mistake. I think he learned from the mistake that he made at Talladega, and he's a guy that probably not going to use in Fantasy Live all year outside of maybe the plate tracks. So you have plenty of uses on him. He's a guy that I have in my fantasy lineup right now.
Well, Steve, I appreciate coming by and joining us. I'm going to give you one more. I never really talk about bonus picks. Maybe emotional, maybe facts. Jimmy Johnson. I don't have him in my lineup, but I do have Jimmy Johnson winning the race. Think about this. 4 crew chiefs have got their first win here at Daytona in the last 5 years. Kevin Meendering still winless. Can he bring his crew chief to victory lane? They won the shootout at the beginning of the year, so maybe Jimmy Johnson will be that sentimental favorite. Just remember, guys, 7 o'clock, NBC. Tune in. Upstairs, we got Rick Allen, Jeff Burton, and my buddy Dale Jr. I'll be down in the Peacock Pit Box. I assure you it's going to be an entertaining race.